Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Sotonye Afiesima. If you're a subscriber, thanks for your support. If you're a returning visitor, I appreciate you dropping by again. Why not subscribe so that you'll receive updates of my video uploads? If you're here for the first time, welcome to my channel where I discuss events that occurred on this day in history with a view to informing, hopefully entertaining, and most importantly, learning lessons from positive events and mistakes of the past, and hopefully not repeating those mistakes. Because as the saying goes, history tends to repeat itself. So guys, let's get cracking with today's important events as recorded in history. First, in our usual tradition, we shall roll back the blind, starting with North Dakota and South Dakota. So on this day, these two states were admitted to the Union called the United States. North Dakota as the 39th state of the Union, and South Dakota, pictured here. You might miss it if you blink. So there we go. South Dakota as the 40th state of the Union. So these two states were admitted to the Union called the United States of America on this day in 1889. Let's move on now. 24 years later, the year is 1913, and Burt Lancaster was born. Full name, Burton Stephen Lancaster. He was an American actor and producer. Initially known for playing tough guys with a tender heart, he went on to achieve success with more complex and challenging roles over a 45-year career in film and later television. He was a four-time nominee for the Academy Award for Best Actor, winning once, and he also won 2 BAFTA Awards and 1 Golden Globe Award for Best Lead Actor. Lancaster performed as a circus acrobat in the 1930s. After serving in World War II, the 32-year-old Lancaster landed a role in a Broadway play and drew the attention of a Hollywood agent. His breakthrough role was a film noir, The Killers, in 1946, alongside Ava Gardner. A critical success, it launched both of their careers. So again, Burt Lancaster, who was born on this day in 1913. 1917, on this day, 4 years later, the British issued the Balfour Declaration. So that is the British Foreign Secretary, Arthur James Balfour, for whom the declaration was named after. It was a statement of support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, which was made in a letter from Arthur James Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary. And this letter was actually addressed to Lord Rothschild, which I shall show you in a few seconds. So that's a letter. And the letter reads, Dear Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which have been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done with which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I will be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Okay, and that's signed by Arthur James Balfour, British Foreign Secretary. And then there's also a newspaper clipping right here which says exactly the same thing. Okay, so yeah, it's nice that not just the Jews were being looked after, but those who inhabited the area of Palestine. But we know that there have been skirmishes, there have been wars since then. But I think the important thing is that it was actually written down, enshrined into law as well, that the people of Palestine will be treated fairly. We know that hasn't always been the case, but the fact that at least it was actually written down. This thing started off with fairness in mind, which is a good thing. Not to treat those who are not Jews any different from those who are Jews. Everyone has equality before the law, or should be equal before the law. Again, that's not always happened. That has not always been the case. Anyway, so that's history as it happened today in 1917. 3 years later, we're back in the United States, and it's the 19th Amendment, which was brought to certified on the 26th of August. I'm going to show you some more pictures, and then we'll bring things back to this day. So, 19th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. I'm not sure what they mean by any state or by any state, because this just pertains to the United States. They're not going to enforce the rights of women to vote in other countries, But anyway, not quite sure why that says or by any state. So anyway, so this was the beginning of change. So beginning on the 26th of August in the same year, 1920, the 19th Amendment was certified by U.S. Secretary of State Bainbridge Colby, and women finally achieved the long-sought right to vote throughout the United States. So this is where history was made. So November 2nd, so on this day, 1920, more than 8 million women across the United States voted in elections for the first time. So that was a huge, huge achievement by the women of America. So these are pictures of protests and, meetings, lobbying the president and, the stakeholders. So you can see women fighting for the right to vote, non-violently in most cases. Okay, so today we take that for granted. We take the fact that women have achieved the right, have been granted the right to vote. We take it for granted, but it wasn't always like that. The same with African Americans and people of color as well. We're voting today. We shouldn't take the fight that our ancestors had, the skirmishes and the violence, demonstrations, riotings. You don't take all that for granted. I know, some of them were illegal, especially when you destroy other people's properties so that your voice is heard, But let's not take those who protested peacefully for the rights that we enjoy today. We shouldn't take those efforts for granted. Okay, so 10 years later, in 1930, Tafari Makonnen, pictured here, was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia, taking the name Haile Selassie. So that's Tafari Makonnen, who was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia on this day. And as you can see here, it says, Hail Rastafari. And I guess that's where the word Rastafarian comes from. As you may know, the Rastafarian movement traces its origins to Ethiopia. So go read about it, find out what it's all about if you're interested in that. But yeah, Ethiopia, I think, is the home of the Rastafarians. You have quite a few of them in Jamaica as well. Right, probably more Rastafarians in Jamaica than in Ethiopia, actually. Okay, let's move on. 6 years later, 1936, the British Broadcasting Corporation officially launched its first television channel, which was also the world's first regular TV service. So BBC 1936 launched the world's first regular TV service. 14 years later, in 1950, George Bernard Shaw died. George Bernard Shaw, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1925, died at the age of 94. Known at his insistence simply as Bernard Shaw, he was an Irish playwright, critic, polemicist, and political activist. His influence on Western theatre, culture, and politics extended from the 1880s to his death and beyond. He wrote more than 60 plays, including major works such as Man and Superman in 1902, Pygmalion, which I should talk about a bit in a few minutes. And so Pygmalion was written in 1912 and Saint John in 1923. With a range incorporating both contemporary satire and historical allegory, Shaw became the leading dramatist of his generation, and in 1925 was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Now about Pygmalion. This is a very, very interesting movie which you should go check out. It's not called Pygmalion, it's called My Fair Lady. So essentially, Pygmalion is a legendary figure of Cyprus in Greek mythology who was a king and a sculptor. In ancient Greek mythology, Pygmalion fell in love with one of his sculptures, which then came to life. So now My Fair Lady is based on this book, Pygmalion, and the theatre version of it. Now, there is Professor Higgins, who would be the equivalent of the king and the sculptor. And then there is Eliza Doolittle. So these are the main characters in the film version, which is called My Fair Lady. Now, Eliza Doolittle belonged to the lower rungs of society, if you like, because the British society, even up to today, is very class conscious. You got those who are posh, the upper middle class, the upper classes, and then the working class, and then and so on and so forth. So Eliza Doolittle was a very poor flower girl. Her English was in no way, like standard English or posh English, as they say today. So Professor Higgins, Eliza Doolittle was brought into Professor Higgins' house for him to coach and make her speak more genteel. These were her words, Eliza Doolittle's words. She wanted to speak more genteel. She wanted to appeal to the upper class, the middle upper class of society, so that eventually she could get married into a wealthy family, and that would help her escape poverty. So it's quite interesting. So there's a lot that happened in between, obviously. The tension between both classes, Professor Higgins, looking down on Eliza Doolittle, and Eliza Doolittle being angry and, screaming and all the stuff that comes with the class struggle, if you like, So yeah, go check it out. I don't want to spoil the movie for you. It's very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. So let's move on to 1963. South Vietnamese president, pictured here. His name is Ngo Dinh Diem, was killed in a coup d'etat on this day. He was also a politician, the final prime minister of the state of Vietnam from 1954 to 1955. He then served as president of South Vietnam, which is a Republic of Vietnam, from 1955 until he was deposed and assassinated during the 1963 military coup. So this is Ngo Dinh Diem, who was assassinated on this day, president of South Vietnam, or the Republic of Vietnam. A year later, in 1964, this time he wasn't assassinated, luckily for him, he was deposed. King of Saudi Arabia, King Saud, was formally deposed and succeeded by his brother Faisal, Prince Saud was born on the 15th of January 1902 in Kuwait City. The second son of Ibn Saud, also known as Abdulaziz, he was born in the home of his grandfather Amir Abdul Rahman. They lived in Sikat-i-Naza, where the family was staying after their exile from Riyadh. When his father conquered Riyadh in 1902, Saud followed him with his mother and brothers. So King Saud of Saudi Arabia was formally deposed on this day and succeeded by his brother Faisal. Let's move on to 1966. David Schwimmer, pictured here, known by millions and millions of people around the world for his role in the comedy series Friends. He is an American actor. His full name is David Lawrence Schwimmer, born on this day in 1966. He's also a comedian, actor, director, and producer. Schwimmer began his acting career performing in school plays at Beverly Hills High School. In 1988, he graduated from Northwestern University with a Bachelor of Arts in Theatre and Speech. So that's David Schwimmer or David Schwimmer. I'm not sure what the pronunciation is, what the correct pronunciation is, but yeah, happy birthday, David Schwimmer. Born on this day in 1966, so he would be 54 today. How time flies. David Schwimmer is 54 years old today. 1976, 10 years later, Jimmy Carter, the cheerful, smiling president, former president of the United States. This was the day Jimmy Carter was elected 39th US president. He is also a recipient of the Nobel Prize for Peace, which was given to him in 2002, and Democratic former governor of Georgia. He narrowly defeated Republican Gerald Ford to win the presidency on this day, 1976. Obviously, he was sworn in January 1977, so hence the information that you can see right here. For those, again, who can't see this, I'm going to read this. So it says President Jimmy Carter, 39th President of the United States, 1977 to 1981. The only US president to have received the Nobel Peace Prize after leaving office. He had been a peanut farmer and governor of Georgia before being president. Strongly emphasized human rights as president, has been very active. Being a very active former president. That I can attest to. I mean, if he hadn't been active, I mean, this guy was president when I was 4, so I wouldn't have known anything about him, or very, very little about him, if he hadn't continued to be active. And he's still alive today, amazingly. He must be in his 90s, probably closer to 190. So that's Jimmy Carter, and he seems so cheerful, especially as he has aged. Seems so cheerful, so always smiling, It's amazing to see the glow in his countenance after so many years. So that's President Jimmy Carter, who was elected 39th President of the United States on this day in 1976. 1983, on this day, President Ronald Reagan of the United States signed a bill designating the third Monday in January a national holiday in memory of Martin Luther King Jr. So that's President Reagan, and that is Martin Luther King Jr. This is a poster that was designed obviously to reflect the fact that the third Monday in January was to be designated Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Last but not least, it's the year 2000, and these guys are the first resident crew of the International Space Station. They included 2 Russians and 1 American. I'm sure you can tell who the Russians are and who the American is. So this was the day that they arrived at the International Space Station. The year again was 2000, so 20 years ago. On that note, guys, I hope you were informed and educated and hopefully entertained as well. that's where we come to the end of today's Today in History. Thank you once again for dropping by. I appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, again, click on the notification bell, the subscribe button, and then the notification bell so that you receive updates of my video uploads. Like this video as well if you haven't already. It helps with the algorithm. It helps push this video out to even more viewers. Thanks again, guys. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day. I shall see you tomorrow, 3rd of November, for another edition of Today in History. My name, once again, is Sotonye Afiesimala. It was nice hanging out with you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.